Hi, happy 22, everybody. Welcome to Pressable's first webinar of the new year. I'm Bryce Smith, your host today, and the marketing operations lead here at Pressable. I am thrilled to be joined by Josh Weber. He is the co-founder of Big Red Jelly, and he's here to talk a little bit today about what agencies and freelancers need to be thinking about as we go into 2022. Josh, thanks for taking the time to join us here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm excited.
All right, cool. All right, so I'm extremely excited to dig into this topic with you. But before we dive into everything, would you mind just introducing yourself to the audience and telling us a little bit about Big Red Jelly?
Absolutely. So Josh Weber here. I'm one of the co-founders of Big Red Jelly. We've been around for almost 5 years now. I'd like to think we're relatively new, but I've been in digital marketing, branding, and web design ever since, out of high school, to be honest. And it's been a passion of mine. I've worked in several agencies building up to this point, and then I kind of took the leap. I had that entrepreneurial seizure, as one might describe it, and decided to start Big Red Jelly with a couple co-founders of mine, and we've never looked back since. So it's been an absolute blast. And then luckily, we encountered Pressable, and that's just been an awesome step as well in the right direction. So.
Awesome. So thanks so much for that interview, Josh. And just for transparency here, Big Red Jelly is a Pressable client, and their information can also be found on the website's strategic partners page. So as everybody knows, the world's been, in kind of a rapidly changing pace here since about March of 2022, if not earlier, right? And it seems like every time we start settling into a new normal, something else comes up and shakes things up again. And I'm not necessarily just talking about COVID and variants. We have inflation, we have supply chain interruptions, we have changing opinions about social media, we have, these big Google algorithm changes that have been coming out, new technologies coming into play, and all of these factors impact how and where consumers and businesses spend money. And that means predicting and responding to these changes needs to be in the front mind of marketers, right? So, Josh, you clearly have a lot of experience with this. What should marketers be focused on these days to drive results for their clients? And I'm really talking about those agencies and those freelancers here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just going back to, kind of that prelude. I feel like it gets said at the end of almost every year, right? Where, wow, what a crazy year. That year flew by. So much happened. But saying it after 2020 and even after 2021 was just a whole nother level. I think just about everyone would agree on that point. And you highlighted it nicely with COVID-19, but not just COVID-19. And the pandemic, but, inflation and great strides forward or in different directions within the technology space. So it's really it's really easy to get lost in the sauce of what happened in 2020 and 2021. And so it has kind of forced me to step back as a marketer and ask myself, well, what's going to change in the landscape? What do I think agencies and freelancers need to focus on in order to stay successful and maybe get to that next step? And so one of the big things that you highlighted is the actionable insights and the metrics. I think that's a big thing. I think it's a silver lining that I hope, and I think a lot of business owners have come out of this pandemic understanding, which is we have to do better business online, period, right? If you're a mom or pop shop, if you're a big co, you have to get more efficient. You have to understand the data. And I think one of the big things that we're trying to push here at Big Red Jelly is, look, there are two, in my opinion, two main classes of metrics. There's the leading metrics and then the lagging metrics. And I feel like a lot of small business owners are familiar with lagging metrics, right? My profit, my revenue, my costs, my sales. those are lagging metrics in my opinion, right? But now I think small business owners are starting to wake up to, well, what are leading metrics? What are things that I can monitor and change at the front end that are then going to affect my lagging metrics so that I can make pivots now, right? Because anything could change. We could have a pandemic again tomorrow, right? A new strain. So being comfortable with understanding and monitoring these leading metrics, I think I've started to see small business owners start to adopt that, and I love it. So I think that's a big trend you'll start to see, continue to see through this year.
All right. So, you're just talking about data. Data is vital. Let's talk a little bit about the sources of the data, because marketers now have more access to specific customer data points than ever before, right? So do you mind talking a little bit about building actionable customer profiles and the like, and using them, and doing that using both like online and offline data?
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do, and I probably spend a little too much time doing it, but one of my favorite things to do is working with, when Big Red Jelly, when we work with a small business owner, or even a big business, it's always quite shocking to me just how much of a disconnect there is between their company and the data. It's very rare that I encounter a business where they just have a really good pulse on the data and metrics of their company. It's often said in the space that data or info is the new oil. It's one of the most valuable commodities. Now, whether or not that's true, we can have that philosophical discussion. But I think it's hard to argue that data is not important. And what's interesting is that there's so much data available at your fingertips. So one of my favorite things to do is to introduce a small business owner to Google Analytics for the first time, right? Or Google My Business, or just going into the back end of their social media and saying, hey, this is what these platforms are telling, this is what your audience is telling you, right? This is what the people are telling you about your services, about your products. You can make decisions early in pivoting based on this data. And I just love to see that light bulb kind of go off, right? But I think a big change for agencies and freelancers is this. I see a lot of agencies just saying, hey, well, look at all this data that we give you, right? Look at this awesome dashboard we've created for you, right? Look at all these KPIs we're tracking, these metrics. It's like, okay, well, so what, right? Okay, well, that means that we should do what, right? So I think a big step forward is, okay, you've got the metrics, you've got the data, you've got the dashboard. What's the strategy now? How do you connect those dots? And then just making that a realistic day-to-day implementation, right? Because again, there's some agencies that can do that. Well, based on this data, that means this. Okay, that's cool too, right? But A plus B equals C. What should I do today? What should I do this week, this month? That's now going to affect that data in a positive direction. If you can do those three stages effectively and show that to a client, a customer, a business, then I think we're really talking, right? We're telling stories now with data that are effective and help even small businesses grow. It's a beautiful thing to see. So
you kind of brought up the word telling stories, and it kind of brought me to another question here along these same lines. How do you, either as the agency or how do you as an agency, providing consulting services to a client, how do you go about instructing them on adjusting storytelling or building a story based on the data?
Great. Yeah, this is something that I think is we're just scratching the surface ourselves here at Big Red Jelly, and it's that again, kind of coming back to these different types of metrics. You can explore and discover a lot about your customer using data. I'll give you an example. We were working with a cryptocurrency startup, and they thought that they understood their audience very well. But diving into the data using Google Trends, we use social media, we use some of their initial reviews, we interviewed their stakeholders, So even in a very anecdotal way, but also at a very high level, looking at, trends on Google Trends, you're looking at hundreds of thousands, millions, tens of millions of different touch points. But bringing that all together and then saying, okay, look, this is what we think your target audience is. And then that allowed us to then do a little bit more research and say, well, now how should we pivot your messaging, your branding, your visual identity according to this new information? Let's tell a different story. And we ended up telling a very different story, and it just connected a lot. And then we saw that in the lagging metrics, right? The metrics that came later. So the downloads, the website visits, et cetera. So I think people forget that you can use metrics and data for all the way at the beginning in brand strategy, right? It's not everything. And I do think that there's the other side of the spectrum where people get really lost in the numbers, and we do need to take a step out and ask ourselves, what are the high level trends? But it's so exciting. It's so exciting to pair analytics with creative and then see the result, right? I think that's the big goal for this year.
Right. And so I'm going to key off something else you just said here in terms of the, at what point is it data overload? At what point does the too much data start turning into sort of too many cooks ruining the soup type thing?
Yeah, I think you're asking the wrong person, because that's a problem that I have, to be completely honest. It's funny. Yeah. If you were to say that to any of our directors here, they'd say, yeah, that's probably Josh's Achilles heel. I will say this, that tends to be a minority, I think, that has that problem.
Okay.
Right? I'd venture to guess that at least for us, the vast majority of the businesses that we work with, our clients, there's not enough data, or it's not clear enough, or it's not even accurate, right? Or they don't know how to get started, right? That's a big issue. But there is that minority where, yes, you become inundated with data. And as we like to say, it's paralysis by overanalysis, right? Where we're just paralyzed because we're looking at all the different options and numbers. And at the end of the day, again, I think data is only useful if you can tell a story, and then that story is helping tell you, here's what we can do in the day-to-day, right? If we have a big data meeting and then we come out and we can't answer the question, well, what should I change or do today because of that new information? I think that's a problem, right? So I'm working on it. Right. Yeah. All
right. Fair enough. So in your mind here, what value does the science and art of marketing bring to the table in a world where all this data is readily available to pretty much anybody who sets up a Google Ads or Facebook Ads account and has Google Analytics, right? And and now there are more and more of these online do-it-yourself marketing tools that get launched every day. There's my Facebook feed is full of ads for these companies, right?
Yep. Yes. I'm
sure yours is as well.
Absolutely.
Facebook, Instagram, everything. It's just, this is new platform. So what value does working with an agency bring versus somebody trying to use all these tools to set up and launch their own digital marketing campaigns?
Yeah, great question. This is probably the question I think about the most, especially toward the end of maybe 2020, with just so much changing. But, likewise, and I think anyone in the agency space or freelance space probably gets a lot of the same ads. And what that's telling me is that I see it as a positive in a way where being able to advertise SEO, right? These services or practices that were so technical, and even they seemed magical 5 years ago, right? SEO was black magic to some business owners. They thought they heard it was important, but they had no idea what it meant. Now there are tools out there. I mean, you just look at Facebook Ads Manager today as opposed to when it launched, even 5 years ago. The usability of these platforms is so much easier.
Oh yeah.
Pair that with the fact that business owners now, millennials and soon Gen Z, when they get into business owner roles, they grew up with this technology. So I think if you've positioned yourself too much as, well, we're going to do your Facebook ads, I think a lot of questions are going to start to arise like, well, it's pretty straightforward now. Facebook's got pretty straightforward step-by-step how to set up a campaign. I still think there's value there. And then also you're going to have people that are just younger filling these business owner roles and saying, well, I grew up with this. I can do this in my sleep. So I think those services, there's always benefit to hiring someone where that's their bread and butter and their expertise. But I think there needs to be more emphasis on strategy and creative, right? So again, yes, you know how to set up Facebook ads. You know how to set up Google Analytics. You might even know how to build a website. But we're going to bring the creative that's world-class. You can't commoditize that. It's hard to commoditize unique creative and unique strategy, right? You've got the analytics, you've got the ad account, but you've got A and B. I'm going to tell you how to get C, right? Yeah. So I think there has to be that type of positioning moving forward. More and more businesses are going to say, yes, that's the missing piece I need. I need a team that's going to elevate my creativity and elevate my strategy. I've got the tools. I understand the tools. I need that strategy, right? So again, my opinion, but I see us going that way.
All right. So I've got another kind of off the wall here question for you, but when you're looking at all this data, and you're talking about an agency, being there to drive strategy. I know that a lot of data is good at predicting behavior and predicting how certain things are going to resonate with a particular audience. However, we also know that most people, when they make a buying decision, they do it from an emotional place, right? It's either, there's something that they connect with emotionally that makes them, that pulls them in a certain direction as opposed to another. Car sales are a huge example of this, right? You could look at the specs and features and everything for two cars that are essentially the same. And one thing about the test drive, or one thing about about an ad, or one thing about the color or whatever is going to be what makes that ultimate decision. And that's something you're not going to get, and you're not going to understand as as a small, medium-sized business owner who's trying to run your own PPC and the like. What space is there for agencies, or how does an agency actually drive that emotional connection to the data in terms of actually, communicating brand value and then selling to a consumer?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. Again, I think that kind of alludes to, I'm thinking big picture, right? Long term. We're starting to see these patterns and trends, right? Where things that were so difficult 10 years ago, i.e., you couldn't build or design a website 20 years. You'd have to have a team of developers to build a website, right? 15 years ago. Where now, with these different platforms, you could have a website up today. And likewise, SEO, there's, each is going kind of at its own pace, but it's all coming to what you just mentioned, which is, I think, the two things that are going to be the hardest to automate and duplicate via robotics, AI, whatever, machine learning, commoditize, is that creative and is that strategy. It is that moment where you could have the exact same cars, right? Because there's a whole bunch of tools out there that can do this and that and the other. And at the end of the day, you kind of get lost in the minutia. But at the end of the day, too, again, I think businesses are going to really be attracted to an individual, a consultant, a freelancer, an agency that says, given all these things together, we understand the psychology, we understand what it means, we understand how to connect those dots. And so, again, I think that's why, the word creative gets used a lot. It's overused. We like to say applied creativity. So, okay, given the metric here, here's our creative solution, but how does this apply now, right? What do we actually change on your website in order to increase conversion rate, right? What do we actually change in the verbiage given your target audience research that's actually going to increase the click-through rate? That's strategy, in my opinion, and that's creativity, right? So yeah, I would agree. It's such an interesting topic. I'm interested to see, how it continues. So
okay. All right, so let's kind of get past the minutia here of the data and the like. Although I could easily sit here and talk about it for hours.
Yeah, likewise.
I get the feeling you and I both kind of value it the same amount here, but let's talk about like moving into 2022 and beyond, right? Mm-hmm. Like we've got all this data coming in from a bunch of different sources, and there are even more sources to come. So what technologies do marketers need to be keeping their eyes on right now, in your opinion?
Ooh, yeah, that's a tough one. I think it's wise for people in the marketing space to have their toe at least dipped in what the elephant in the room, right? That obvious kind of elephant in the corner. I'm talking about blockchain technology, NFTs, cryptocurrency in general, right? VR, which kind of leads into the metaverse discussion, but just a whole nother way to play online. You have to be, I think you have to at least be exploring that, have a fundamental understanding of what it is, understand some of the jargon. Again, we can kind of see patterns in history. This is my opinion, but we see some of these patterns when the internet kind of took off. In fact, I was reading an article the other day, maybe I'll send it to you after and you can maybe link it, but it was showing the adoption line of when the internet was kind of launching, right? The .com era and an equivalent line of cryptocurrency. And it's almost identical in terms of its rate of adoption and its growth. So what does that tell me? I think that tells me that it would be foolish not to understand and get involved in some way. I'm not saying you need to pivot your business model, but understanding the technology, the trends, the terms, the jargon, et cetera. But then also understanding that maybe, much like the .com bubble, there's going to be a little bit of a burst. And who came out of that growth were ones that had real technology, solid founders, and a clear vision, right? You can go back and actually look at the Amazons, the eBays, the Googles that came through there, and all the ones that fell to the wayside. Again, prediction, I think that's entirely possible for this industry. So it all comes down to the same questions. Which one are actually built on new or innovative technology? Who's solving a problem? Who has solid founders that you believe in? Who has a clear vision? And I think 2 or 3 years from now, you'll look back and you might have picked better options, right, than some of the other guys.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I watched the Zuckerberg rollout of Meta, and he was talking a great deal about VR, talking about augmented reality, and talking about being able to essentially own real estate in the virtual world. And I think about there have been other companies that have tried to do this before in the past. Yeah. What was it called? Other Life, I think. Was like a virtual icon like world or whatever, and people were at one point trying to sell real estate, like building houses in it, trying to actually sell that.
Wow.
And I think it's kind of interesting that essentially went up there and said, "Yeah, we're going to make this actually happen." I'm an adopter of VR technology. I have an Oculus. I actually kind of love it, but I don't see myself doing commerce on there very often. I don't know, but once again, it might not be for me. Like this may be like, my daughter and my, if I have grandchildren or whatever, maybe that may be how they are doing it. So I don't know, but I think it's all super interesting, and I'm always kind of I'm always kind of sitting on this fence of which of these new technologies is going to really, move the needle, and what stuff is going to be a fad that really just kind of drops off. So
yeah, totally. And nobody knows. And anyone who says that they know, maybe steer away from that person, right? No, nobody knows for sure what's going to happen. But what does give me great solace, I think, is the fundamentals of marketing, of effective marketing, branding will always be the same, in my opinion.
True.
Right? I really think so. So again, just going back to, if you're an agency out there, if you're a freelancer, just positioning your services a little bit more in that, hey, we're creative and we're strategic. We're going to help connect the dots, no matter the medium, right? Whether we're talking about VR, we're talking about web design, we're talking about SEO, right? The mediums will change, the technologies will change, they'll update, competitors will fall away, new ones will come in. But if you're seen as a solution provider, you can provide that creative and that strategy, you're in a good place, right? And then the fundamentals of marketing will always be there. You can fall back on those. And
Very
so,
true.
yeah.
Very true. All right, so let's go back let's travel back from the future stuff here to kind of a little more current of a topic here. So the COVID pandemic has really changed the way a lot of companies do their business. And so, what are some of the trends you're observing right now? Either with your business or with clients, and how do you see these? How do you see any of these changes or trends impacting how companies market themselves in the short term?
Yeah, I think one of the earliest things that we noticed just firsthand was adoption of online everything for smaller local businesses, which again, is a silver lining, I think, throughout this pandemic. Of course, there were a lot of businesses that could not, make that happen. But those that did make it through, I think there's this new understanding and confidence that, we need to do business online, and doing business online isn't reserved for big co anymore. And that's awesome. Again, introducing a small business owner to Google Analytics, to Google My Business, to managing their own website now, to offering local deliveries online, being able to book online, take purchases online instead of just, hand-to-hand cash POS system. Some of those steps are huge steps for a small business owner. And now they're a lot more approachable. And I think that that's awesome. So that was the first trend. I think it's made our small businesses much more resilient, I think. So I love it. Yeah. And I would say kind of a couple things that play into that would be, again, going back to the analytics, you're starting to see people who that was just a word in a pie in the sky type of idea, right? Analytics, what does that even mean? But now they're actually diving in. We've got several small business clients of, more mature business owners who never thought that they would even understand what, click-through rate was, or conversion rate, or be able to do some of their own SEO. And it's fantastic. I think those are all success stories, right? Through this pandemic. So I love it. I love to see it. And I think it'll continue. So.
All right. Cool. So I've got just a couple more things, and then I'll let you go, because I do want to be very respectful of your time here. What advice do you have for, say, a fledgling agency, or people who want to start, they want to start agency, or they want to start freelancing this year? What advice would you have for them?
If I could go, it's funny because I thought I had this conversation with one of our directors last week. We were talking about if I could go back in time, even 3 years ago, if I could go back to Josh 3 years ago, what would I say? What would help make my life easier? What would help me grow faster and more efficiently and more sustainably? One of those things is, I think it's so easy for agency owners and entrepreneurs and freelancers to just put the blinders on and get stuck into the day-to-day. And as tough as it is to step out and work on your business instead of in your business is just so vital. And I think in order to do that, you have to sit down and say, what's the vision here, right? What will your business look like 10 years from now? What will it look like 5 years from now? Put some hard numbers down on paper. What will it look like 1 year from now, 90 days from now? And then in order to achieve that 90 days, what do you have to get done this month, this week, today, right? It just helps put everything in perspective. When I look back, and a lot of people say this, right? A lot of people say this, but I don't think a lot of people actually do it. And we just come into work every day, especially as an entrepreneur, as an agency. And it's just like, what's on the calendar, and then the week goes by and you sit back and you say, what happened? What happened this week? And did it move the ball forward to my 90-day vision, which is part of my year vision, my 5-year vision? So just breaking it all down that way. And then the second thing I would add is, once that's in place, going back to the metrics, give metrics to yourself and to everyone on your team. I'm a big believer that everyone should have a number or numbers that help them know where they stand. And a lot of people are scared to do that because they think, well, I might come across as micromanaging. There's more than just metrics. It's like, yes, of course there are, but trust me, it's going to be liberating for your team to have KPIs by which they can measure their own success. And you'll just see an acceleration in performance, responsibility, accountability that will greatly alleviate pressure, which I know a lot of people that are listening to this are feeling pressure. So, that's kind of the goal. And that's the irony, is in doing less and in giving responsibility to others through KPIs and a vision, you're able to do more, right? I wish younger Josh knew that earlier.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up the idea of agencies not working on their own business. I don't know how many people I know that have a small agency or whatever, and they completely ignore they're a marketing agency, they're an advertising agency, and they completely ignore their own marketing and advertising. They put out a blog a month. If they do any blogging at all, they haven't updated their Facebook ads in 5 months. They haven't updated their website in a year. They haven't because they're busy doing it for everybody else. And I understand, but it's sort of that physician heal thyself type situation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I know of lots of people where that's an issue. One agency I do know that successfully overcame that, and they're a little bit on the bigger side for an agency, but they basically have their own marketing team. Wow. It doesn't work on clients; it just works on. They call it their biz dev team, but it's the salespeople that are doing calls, but it's also a little cell of 3 people that do all of the blog writing. They do all the social media. They do interviews with current clients to find out what they do and do not like about working with them. They get all of this together and they use it to make sure that their advertising is as strong as what they're giving for their marketing is as strong as what they're giving to their clients. So I'm really glad you brought that up, because that is a huge point. Yeah.
I love it. It's a work in progress too. I find ourselves in a similar boat to that agency. We now have the luxury of having a team at Big Red Jelly who's able to dedicate themselves toward our own marketing and PR. But in those early days, in those early months where it's just you and you're wearing all those hats, you have to almost in a way pretend like you got to take that implementation hat off and dedicate some time to work on your business, but start high level with the vision, break it all the way down to a 90-day world, and then attack from there. You'll get more done and you'll just be laser focused. So,
all right. Well, Josh, that's all the questions I have for you today. I really appreciate you taking the time to join me, share your thoughts with our audience. And, like I said, I want to be really respectful of your time. I don't want to keep you too much longer. Do you have, sort of any final words for the audience, sort of wrap everything up, put a nice bow on it?
I think the only thing I would say is this, going back to the vision, we had our State of the Jelly last week, where we kind of go over the vision for the whole company, and we kind of revamped our purpose, which is to inspire creativity and growth. And So that's kind of a theme that we've been trying to hit home with all of our clients and all the people that we encounter. And so we appreciate Pressable and just the partnership that we have. And we hope that in our workings with clients, people, encounters, interns, employees, leaders, people like yourself, we hope that we inspire creativity and growth. And we know that we receive that from you. So I think it's going to be a great year. It's an important year. Let's see how we bounce back from a really tough 2020 and 2021. But I'm optimistic, and I think we can do this together. So,
all right, cool. Josh, thank you so much. You've been a great guest, and I, for one, I've truly enjoyed this conversation. So I hope Likewise. We can do it again real soon.
Okay, thanks, Bryce. Have a great one.
All right, thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.